Hi, good morning. Thank you all for being here. I know it's early. So as many of you might have heard, the Boston Globe is in the process of reinventing itself. Over the last year, more than 60 people in our newsroom have been dedicated to this effort, coming up with a plan for how to shed some of our old print habits and become more digital. This week, we released a 4,000-word memo outlining this plan. But the good news is that we actually, it wasn't that interesting. A lot of the ideas in there we've taken from other newsrooms well represented in this room, well represented on this panel. We need to be faster. We need to carve out a print desk that's going to handle our print operations. We need to put our audience more front and center. And at our core, we need to be unafraid to experiment, even when some things might fail. I'm happy to go into more details on that as part of the panel, but I thought I would start actually by taking a step back and talk about what becoming more digital means at the Globe. First, we need to be more data-driven. Second, we need to be more agile and adaptive. And third, we need to make sure that storytelling is front and center in all of these efforts. So I'm going to start actually 100 years ago. There was the night of election night, 1916. There was a horrible trolley crash in Boston. 46 people died after a trolley broke through a safety guard and plunged into the Fort Point Channel. Now, you may wonder what this has to do with being digital, but this was, in the Globe terms, a home run piece. It was a narrative piece that one of our best writers decided to take on in the fall of 2016. I had just taken over as the managing editor for digital, and this was our first big project. And we put all of our guns were blazing. This story had it all. It had a social video, it had a searchable database, it had an audio version of it, it had, let me think, you name it, it had it in terms of digital. And the team, it was gorgeous. Every part of it was beautiful. Graphs, you name it. So we do this beautiful work, and at the end of it, we say, what did we learn from it? And we realized we hadn't actually collected any data, any real data. We had a good sense of the page views, for instance, but we didn't really know how many people had subscribed because of it. We didn't know, we saw engagement time was over 10 minutes on it, but we didn't, and we assumed that had to do with the fact that it had the audio version, but we had no idea how long people were listening for. We had no idea, whether or not they even clicked on the audio button. So we decided that we had to stop doing that. And over the course of 3 months, the first 3 months that I was on this job, we did almost 30 interactive projects. So they were big and small. They were, some of them were highbrow, some of them were lowbrow. But on every single one of them, we collected as much data as we could. And for context, the Globe had done about that many projects in the previous 2 years. So this was truly an experiment. And we just needed to be faster. We needed more swings of the bat. We needed to get our things out there and learn from them and find out what works. And one of the things that we found was, for instance, this trolley piece ultimately converted about 30 subscriptions. When 4 months later, we did a project that was very, very low dev. We used a template to build it. But because that template had been informed by the data that we collected, it performed about 10 times better in terms of getting subscriptions. Next, we've been really working on being lean about how we do our experimentation. One of the areas that the Globe has a lot of room for improvement in is audience engagement. We are behind our peers in a lot of ways, but we also don't have any new resources to do it. So we've been trying to come up with new and fun ways to try these things out. One of the things that we have done is, a few years ago, we killed our mobile app. We never rebuilt it, so we have no alert system, the on-screen alert system. So we decided about a month ago to start testing out Facebook Messenger bots. And this experiment literally costs us $10 a month. We're still in the very early stages of it, but the click-through rates on it are 6 times better than a Facebook post and 20 times better than a tweet. And we see a lot of room for scale. The other thing that we did is that we also we didn't really have a good way to talk to our subscribers. We didn't really do audience surveys, so we decided to create a Facebook subscriber group. So essentially, if you're a subscriber to the Boston Globe, you ask for permission to join this group. We have about 3,000 people in it now, but these are our most loyal readers. They are grouchy. They notice everything, right? And they always are offering their opinion. And they love to interact with reporters and editors. So our editors do a lot of communication back and forth. They ask people what they like. They try to get a gauge on what works. But our reporters are better, even better ambassadors in this group. They go in and they tell their stories about how their stories were made behind the scenes. And constantly, we get wonderful feedback from subscribers about how much they like kind of hearing the backstory to how things were made. And also just they loved the fact that they can now recognize our staff. So just the other day, I was in the grocery store and this man came up to me and he asked me if I was Kate Kingsbury. I said, yes, and he's like, I know you from Facebook. And then finally, I wanted to talk about a small experiment that we're doing right now. In May, we are going to have our first live event. We're going to have Globe reporters like Sasha Pfeiffer from our Spotlight team. You may have heard of her, and others talk about their journalism in a live event that we're going to Facebook Live. But otherwise, the only way to really experience it is to be there. And that's one of the things we're doing is inviting subscribers to buy tickets first. And then I wanted to last but not least, I wanted to talk about this idea of putting storytelling first. So at the end of the day, one of the biggest goals for our reinvention project has been to figure out a way to divorce our storytelling and our content creation from our platforms. You know, we really want to make sure that we are telling, now that we have so many ways to tell stories, that we're picking the best way to do it in every case. And I'm going to talk briefly about a project that we did last June in wake of the Pulse nightclub shooting. I think on the staff of the Globe, the editorial page in particular, which I was the deputy editorial page editor at the time, we felt a lot of the fatigue that Americans felt in the wake of another mass shooting, this time the largest. And we didn't really know what to do. We didn't want to write another long editorial that would just run on our website. And so we decided to go bigger. And we decided we really wanted to create something that allowed for a actionable and empathetic response on the part of our audience. And we wanted it to be a print and digital immersive experience. So we first of all took over the front page of the newspaper on June 16th. I should say this whole project took 3 days. About 60 members of the Globe staff worked on it overall, but it ultimately was an opinion product. We put the editorial message on the front page. We paired it with a beautiful print graphic display and a traditional editorial on the back of the page calling for a ban on assault weapons. Then we thought about how can we do this with social media. And we tweeted out over 36 hours the name, age, and location of every person who had been killed in a mass shooting since the last assault weapons ban had been lifted in 2004. As I said, it took 36 hours. Ultimately, 6 million people interacted with these tweets. And finally, we decided that, and this is probably the most controversial part of this package, we decided we had to give readers a call to action. That was something that we felt they really needed. And we created pre-populated tweets and emails that went out to 6 senators that we identified who had the most ability to change the law, who could actually make gun control happen in the United States. These were not people who were the most extreme on gun rights. They were people who were moderates, who were vulnerable for re-election, and who we might be able to change their mind. And we sent over 10,000 emails and 8,000 tweets over the course of about a week. So, at the end of the day, all this is about is making sure that we are giving readers what they want where they are and meeting them, and always being unafraid, to be sure that we're putting them front and center, because the Globe can't take it for granted. No newspaper can take it for granted that everyone is going to come back every day. We have to win every day. And these are some of the ways that we're doing it. Thank you.